There was about 16 questions. There was a lot of interesting answers. What we've done is on some of the items that they sort of relate, or we found some cross tabulation, some opportunities to sort of compare the way people answered. We're going to do that in the next few slides. This is great. No economists, no consultants. This was all by your peers and by manufacturers who basically were responsible for the answers and giving us their input. Um, and I think this is most critical is that it was 75% of a leadership profile. So within there was about, I think, 5% owners, and then the rest of the 70% were CEOs, CFOs, executive C-level personnel that are crunching the numbers and feeling the pain. So, again, we did this survey for about a month, starting in the month of January. Survey had around 16 questions. We tried to keep it very basic, very simple, focusing on cost pressures, long-term profitability, and then labor as an aspect of that. And then we also did ask a few questions to get a better understanding of the demographic of who took it, not just the if they're a leadership member, but the employee size, so roughly 10 employees to 500. Diving directly in, here's what the data doesn't show. And obviously, in Trotta Group, we have 25 years of working with manufacturers having to set up in Mexico. So, with the 20 years of experience working with manufacturers, everything from wire harness, electronics, fishing rods, traction motors for locomotive engines, premium speaker systems for the automotive industry, you know, cut and sew, a lot of different processes and a lot of different industries that we represent. The biggest thing that we've learned in the 20 years and see across all disciplines is that if your cost structure can't compete with production, even if you're in Mexico or Asia, more sales activity is not going to close the gap. So you can have the best sales team in the world, which is awesome. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of RFQs or things that you can't compete on and you can't go after if you do not have a low cost solution. Right now, we're actually working with a prospect. We've advanced it very far. I've actually known this company for since 2015. I've been working with them, building cost models, going back and forth, maintaining the relationship. And it wasn't until last year we had a phone call that they basically told us, JP, we left $8 million on the table last year in 2025. And this was money that there's no way with our facility in the US that we would ever be able to go after and maintain the projects. The clients are begging us. They want us to take the work, but we just don't have the cost structure. And so at the end of the day, after over 10 years of just peeking at Mexico, taking a look at Mexico, they actually flew down in December, I'm sorry, in January, and they came to visit our operations and actually visit our clients' operations and walk through them. And so at the end of the day, this is not a sales problem. It's a cost structure problem that sales investment, unfortunately, is unable to fix. And so what this is leading me into is the cost pressure portion of the survey. And so at the end of the day, the very first question we asked was over the past 24 months, how have your profit margins changed? And unfortunately, 43% of the participants have said that it declined slightly, while 29% said it stayed about the same, and 29% said that it improved. So 43%, I'd be willing to bet that had our prospective client taken that survey, they'd be right in that 43%. And pushing that further, right? You can see at the bottom in green, we sort of give the questions from the survey that these percentages fulfill. Which one is putting the most pressure on your margins today? And 29%, which was the highest, named materials at the top margin of pressure. And to give you a better idea of what those were, they were trade policies, they were labor costs, they were customer pricing pressure and materials. And as we say, materials at 29%, Tariffs and trade policies were actually higher. They were 36%. But unfortunately, it's what you can control, and tariffs is something you have zero control over. So what's in your power were the materials portion. Um, and so which one cost area is the most challenging for you to control? And obviously, again, that is the materials. And then it was really interesting because we followed that up with asking, have you been affected by the copper tariff? And a massive portion of you, right? If you're not affected by it, then you probably aren't manufacturing, right? So 82% of you are being affected by the copper tariff. And obviously now April 2nd, that's getting even more interesting for those of you that have to import copper to finish your product. You're learning now that it's not just going to be about the percentage of copper or steel or aluminum that you're importing in the product. It's actually going to be based, the percentage now will be based upon the cost, that the full cost of the widget, harness, whatever it is that you're producing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in Mexico, it doesn't matter if you're in Canada, it doesn't matter if you're in India or China. If you're not buying copper, steel, or aluminum from the US, that is something across the board for everyone that you are going to feel. This is an interesting one, and this is kind of where we're starting to do some of the cross tabulation. Um, you know, lean manufacturing, obviously there's a massive appeal for it. Um, but at the end of the day, lean can't fix a tariff. And so while a lot of our clients, when they basically answered which one best describes your top strategic priority to stay cost competitive, lean was actually one of the objectives that they felt very highly was going to help them. And other answers, you had essentially investing in automation at 14%, nearshoring, offshoring at 14%, absorbing margin losses at 7%, and the last supplier renegotiation at 4%. Okay. So obviously the 61% of you choosing to lean, it'll be interesting to see if you're able to lean a tariff. Um, I think the one thing that we can obviously give hope in for Mexico is right now it averages as at 4%. Even if you do not qualify for USMCA, the average is around 4%. It's the lowest in the world. And in fact, as tariffs are growing, this is giving Mexico a huge cost advantage. While you think about it, everyone else is at an average of 10% tariff, if not 30 to 40%. So this is something that as our clients are learning, Mexico may not be the best place to be in the world, but it's also not the worst. Okay. So next we move to um, long-term profitability. And again, we have some kind of cross-tabulation going in here with some of the answers. The first one, which one concerns you the most about long-term profitability? And those of you that answered this, you obviously answered it at 43% labor availability and cost. Um, Included in that was material cost at 25%, government regulation at 21%, international competitors at 7%, and industry consolidation at 4%. Okay. And this is pretty interesting because while that is a big concern, right? Labor, where are you going to get your labor from? And how are you going to make your labor cost effective? It is not reflected in the way that you are actually investing, or at least not in 2025. So, which one area saw the most investment in 2025? Capital machinery, sales and client acquisition, while you only put 11% into labor and training. So it's really interesting to see when you cross these things that it is a top concern, but at the end of the day, you could start to understand you're not investing in it. You're not doing anything that's going to help you be able to address that 43% with a concern of labor availability and cost. So I think this is, I hope this is kind of helping you think about the way that you're planning on investing this year and next year, giving you a better idea. I mean, I know with our clients, even though they're in Mexico, US, Malaysia, they're in Eastern Europe. They're in a lot of different locations producing, a lot of them because nowadays, in order to be regional, you have to be global, right? You want to supply Volkswagen in China, you're not shipping it from the US or Mexico. You actually have to be in China. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of them are doing a combination. They're buying new machinery. They're still doing some automation, but they are investing very heavily in training and everything that it takes to be able to attract the labor and prevent them from leaving to other companies. Okay, so next, again, this goes after the long-term profitability portion. Reshoring confidence doesn't win bids. So, do you believe your company will be able to land a reshoring project in the next 12 to 36 months? Well, 39% of you actually believe that you will, right? And so while this is very interesting to get a better idea of how these companies are thinking that they will be able to, the next one, over the past 5 years, which one of the following best describes your company's investment into offshore or nearshore manufacturing facilities? So when we took a look at the answers and the way people answered throughout the survey, 91% of the people who answered um, basically, uh, of these companies that are confident about winning reshoring work, they're either already running offshore or nearshore operations, or they are actively evaluating them. So this is something that's positive. They already believe that they're going to win some work that is going to be coming back towards the US or North America, but at the end of the day, they've already done the legwork or they're already doing the legwork, which on my next slide 61% that believe they are not going to land, of those 61%, which is really interesting, when you ask them over the past 5 years, which one of the following best describes your company's investments into offshore or nearshore manufacturing facilities? 50% of them, right, of the 61%, don't expect to win any reshoring projects. And half of them are basically investing mostly in sales and client acquisition. So they're not putting the money into potentially looking at an offshore or a nearshore operation. They're basically putting that money into sales and client acquisitions. So again, this sort of takes me full circle back to what I was mentioning about the company at the very beginning. Again, right? They're losing an $8 million project. They've got the best sales team in the world, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, especially if you don't have a nearshore or an offshore low cost manufacturing um, operation. So uh, here we go again with long-term profitability. This was a question: what is your top concern about manufacturing in a low-cost country? And given everything Mike just said, uh, wars and geopolitical instability. This is not the same world that I know that I was born in 1980, and a lot of you have experienced in manufacturing for however many years you've been doing it. But 29%, one third, nearly one third of the manufacturers who took the survey said that geopolitical concerns are the biggest issue that they are concerned about when they are looking at a low-cost country. I'll go through the next one: managing remote operations at 21%, quality control at 18%, lead times and distance to market at 18%, rising labor costs at 11%, and I can tell you that's true. Uh, Mexico, just like anywhere else, is obviously feeling inflation and feeling the pressure to increase its wages. Intellectual property protection at 4%, which I have clients who face that in Asia. And yeah, and so basically the geopolitical would be definitely the highest one on there. So with the political stability and the trade security, Mexico is still a part of USMCA, and at the safest bet, as we know, this is the sunset clause year. This is a renegotiation year. At the safest bet, if negotiation fails, it has another 10 years in place, right? And no other country has that with the US right now. I don't care who it is. No other country has that in place. Only Canada and Mexico do. And obviously, we're excited to see what happens. Now we're going to move over to the labor portion. This is a big one, and I see this with my clients, a lot of them who did have to come to Mexico. A lot of these companies building harnesses out of Detroit, Chicago, and particularly, retention isn't the problem. It's actually getting people to drop off resumes. It's trying to get them into the door so you can interview them. So attracting workers at 39%, right? This is what describes the most challenging labor-related aspect for your organization right now. 36% is productivity, 11% is retaining workers, 11% is labor cost, which we'll talk a little bit more about. We did in the survey, we asked how much companies are paying. None of the above was 4%, and that was the lowest. Essentially, this is something that's really big. While a lot of you are not investing in training programs or anything to try and actually retain the workers, the number one concern is trying to get them to show up and actually interview. In Mexico, we're actually having quite the opposite effect. In Mexico, manufacturing is still a very, very sought after occupation. In Mexico, what we see is in the wire, just our harness builders. We have around 2,800, 3,000, 2,800 people that are building harnesses or doing similar labor intensive activities. And 50% of those people are between the ages of 17 to 28, right? And then the next is 25% of them are between 29 to 38 years old. And call it the economy, call it the instability, call it what you will. Last year, our average per month was 2.2% turnover between our two campuses, and that's a total of 4,500 employees. So it was an amazing year for turnover. And no, it has not always been like that. One of the things is the location where we have our harness builders at. Um, Historically, we've probably been closer to about 5% turnover, where historically the border, places like Juarez, Tamaulipas, have been much, much closer to 18 to 20%. It's not just about going to Mexico, it's about where you go to try and find that labor source. Okay, so this is an interesting one. What you are paying in the US, right, per hour. And you can see right here in big bold orange, 24 to $29 US dollars is basically the going rate at what the majority of you are paying. And as I said before in the survey, while a lot of people listed other as their manufacturing, the next highest was actually the Midwest. Okay. We do show that $30 and higher was at 25%, which actually tied with 18 to $23. So that was pretty fascinating to learn what companies are paying, sort of a benchmarking, give you a better idea of how you compare to that. And then I think it's really important that I compare this to Mexico. Mexico is increasing. My next slide I'm going to talk about is basically how Mexico the wage rate is increasing, but at the rate that the U.S. dollar at what employees are making in dollars is increasing, it's literally dollars to pennies, right? In Mexico, what we see on average where our clients are is around $6 per hour. That's fully burdened to our clients. That includes the market-driven benefits as well as the government benefits. And you think about that, that's 4 to 5 times less than what we're seeing here and what people reported and recorded in this survey. So here we go. This is a slide that we put in here just to talk about this. We get this in the orange that comes to us from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They update that monthly. We just pulled the most recent, and it was at basically $30 for the month of March in 2026. What we have from our most latest cost model that we've produced, we can see we're at $6. The biggest factor here is not necessarily that the wage rate is increasing. You have to remember, Mexico has a free floating peso. The peso is not pegged to the dollar. Right now, what is Trump trying to do to the dollar? Well, he's weakening it, right? The dollar over the past year has basically weakened to every other currency. Not going to get into strategies and why this is happening or why we believe this is happening, but effectively what happens is we've seen the peso go from 19 pesos to the dollar to closer to 17. So that $6, a portion of that is actually from the weakening dollar and adding more value or strength to the peso. Okay. So again, but when we look at this, we do see the increase. I mean, to be honest, 2016, 10 years ago, it was $1.26. And then USMCA came and they had to hit him over the head and come with the Mexican president and basically talk him into increasing the wage rate so that they would be closer to hoping they would be closer to the $16 an hour that they would be paying in the US and Canada. So this is something that while it is the Mexican worker is making more money, yes, it also is affected by the value of the currency. It doesn't matter in the US. I mean, it's basically $10 right now that it has increased over the last 10 years in the US. So, uh, again, I'm going to try and hold this up. I don't know if you'll see it. Email us. We'll get you a copy of this. It's about 15 pages. It's packaged, put together very nicely. It has all of the charts and percentages and everything else and much, much better explained graphically than I could do it speaking in a webinar of 50 minutes. So again, we hope that you are able to get a copy of this. Please reach out to be more than happy to send it to you. And so quickly, Entrada Group, we're not a subcontractor or what they call a shelter operator. We help companies that have to set up operations in Mexico. We take care of all the fun Mexican bureaucracy. You bring your equipment, your training, your knowledge, your know-how. These people are indoctrinated in your culture. We lease you the facility. We do all the Mexican general administrative services that are necessary to have the operation. Think of all the compliance, Mexican finance, tax accounting, trade and compliance, um, environmental safety hazard, right? All the fun stuff, HR, labor laws. Our clients don't deal with that. They literally train their people how to build harnesses. They're working with their clients. They're going after new RFQs. We take care of Mexico. And so at the end of the day, we're not a contract manufacturer. We're not a subcontractor. We're not going to build it for you. We are also not a legal partner. We're not sharing in your profits. We charge you a unit fee per person per hour worked. And that's essentially what covers everything from us being USMCA certified, us having CTPAT Homeland Security certifications, other Mexican certifications that are necessary for you to run and operate that operation in Mexico. Okay, so again, this is all based on a win-win partnership where we're doing whatever necessary to help our clients grow. Why? Because we make our money on headcount. So the bigger our clients get, the more work that they win, the more money we're all making, right? It's a win-win partnership. We do this through a campus model. We have two campuses where we deliver our Entrada Group solution through a shared service system. So we're doing everything from HR to trade and compliance, the environmental safety hazard, construction, IT services. Everything is basically delivered through the shared service model for 16 different clients and a total of around 4,500 employees in our campus locations. We have two locations. I've mentioned our Zacatecas location where our wire harness and a lot of our electronics contract manufacturers established. This is closer to the border, 8 hours from Laredo, Texas. While our Celaya, Guanajuato operation, we have three clients currently there today with around 150 employees. This is in the Bajío region, your basically in 40 minutes from Querétaro. You are about 3 hours from Mexico City. If you think in terms of manufacturing, you're an hour from Volkswagen, you're 15 minutes from Honda, you're 25 minutes from Mazda, you're an hour from GM, an hour and 15 minutes from Bombardier. It is a very saturated location compared to our Zacatecas location. There is a lot of other manufacturing happening, and a lot of some of our clients they need that. They need to be just in time, or they want to be close to where they can absorb more in country sales. These are the four harness clients, and again, we've probably worked in total with about 8 to 9 harness companies. We have had one of our larger clients has actually absorbed two of our previous harness manufacturers. They bought them out. Um, and at the end of the day, too, we did lose a client that was in the 2008, 2009 automotive crisis. So again, there's a lot of situations and factors, but at the end of the day, um, our worst nightmare, our clients do get acquired by acquisition groups, and the relationship changes. Sometimes they move on to different operations. Sometimes it's a part of a strategic sale. But at the end of the day, we have these four harness builders that work with us, and have been extremely successful in growing and developing in Mexico. Uh, I'm gonna finish here in the next couple slides, but just a strong wire harness tradition. Again, we have around 2,600 people building harnesses or involved in that, including electronics, contract manufacturing. It's around 3,000 employees in total. We lease around a 250,000 square foot of space to these companies. You get a better idea of the talent. We have around 217 people, process engineers, this is indirect talent, plant managers, quality engineers, etc., that are necessary. And then within these harness companies, we have 20 individuals that are actually certified in IPC 610, 620, which we have two people that do the certification on site. You do not have to send them to the US. You do not have to pay money to have someone come in and do it. This is something that we are able to do right in the campus. And again, at the end of the day, if we know what we're doing, we're saving our clients a lot of money. And just from our EMEX license alone, $24 million of EVA, or value add tax, that is not paid for the import of raw material, right? That's right off the bat. $24 million is what the savings factor is for our clients who decide to come with Entrada Group through this model. So, I don't know if you're ready for manufacturing in Mexico. This is a great readiness assessment, super fast. We've made it very easy. You can scan that QR code, it'll take you right to the assessment. This will give you a better idea of if you should be looking at Mexico. And then from there, we'd love to follow up with you. And we actually love to do a real cost model exercise that gives you several different phases. We can look at a 30-man, 50-man, 100-man operation. Um, how much freight is coming in? How much electrical do you need? The size of the facility for the rent, telecommunications, our fee, everything rolled up into this except for raw material. And we'll give you a fantastic snapshot of what an ongoing operation in Mexico can look like. So, again, just to conclude with everything, Mexico, right? Much, much safer port than any other country today. And again, no, compared to being in the US, no, it's not the best location, but it is much, much better than any other location that you may be in or that you're currently looking at. A lot of you don't know this, but Mexico has, I believe it's 52 or 53 bilateral trade agreements with other countries like Brazil, Japan, and a few other ones. So they never stopped after NAFTA. And then the EMEX program, which Entrada Group, our licenses are under, there's been operating for 60 years. And this is something that we do not see just disappearing or going away or being removed by the government, as it is the largest tool for foreign direct investment in the country of Mexico. And then proximity and convenience. My clients, worst case, 16 hours from Zacatecas. That's how long it takes, worst case, for their goods to cross, to basically get to the border, go through the crossing process, and be ready for pickup on the other side by their client, FedEx, DHL, or whoever else is going to pick it up. Mike and I will both be in Milwaukee. We'll both be at the show. I'll be at booth 1010. Mike will be at booth 1323. Mike is always going to have there the magazines available, which I love. The digital version is great, but I'm still the type of guy that likes to pick up a newspaper. So
Yep.
um, you'll have the physical copy of it there. We as well will have some stuff like this. We'll have some client case studies. We will have some other information on Mexico. Again, we first and foremost, we want to be educators on Mexico. This is a big investment. This is a big decision that companies have to make, and we just hope to be a part of it. Like I said before, I've worked with companies for 8 years, 5 years, 10 years on building up to this decision. And at the end of the day, we are educators and trying to give you all the information necessary to make the best decision you can make.